Sit this out, Lieutenant. Commander Bradley Hawkins' voice cut through the Tactical Operations Center like a blade through silence. His eyes didn't even meet hers as he gestured toward the back row of chairs. This mission requires combat experience you don't have. Lieutenant Lily Morgan stood frozen beside the holographic terrain map, her tablet still displaying the red thread indicators she'd been analyzing for the past 6 hours. Around the massive briefing table, 12 senior officers turned to watch her dismissal. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked relieved. "Sir, I've identified a—" Lily began. "A tactical analysis, yes. We read your report." Hawkins tapped the classified folder without opening it. "Interesting theories about enemy movement patterns. But theories don't save lives when bullets start flying." 18 Navy SEALs were surrounded in Kandahar Valley, trapped in a collapsed building with ammunition running low and enemy forces closing in from 3 directions. The rescue operation had been planned for 72 hours. Bradley Hawkins had led similar missions in Fallujah, Ramadi, and Helmand Province. He didn't need a junior analyst with perfect test scores and 0 combat deployments telling him how to run this one. Lily's fingers tightened on her tablet. Through the tactical feed, she could see the thermal signatures of American warriors preparing to die. She could see something else, too, something the satellite imagery and drone feeds were missing. A pattern in the terrain that created a blind spot in the enemy's defensive network. But Commander Hawkins had already turned back to his strike team leaders. "Captain Drake, walk me through the insertion timeline one more time." As Lily moved toward the back of the room, she caught a flicker on her tablet screen, a message on a frequency that shouldn't exist. 3 words in emergency protocol code: Phantom 7, respond. Only one person in that valley knew to call her by that designation, and he was about to die unless someone broke every rule in the book. The Tactical Operations Center hummed with controlled urgency. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across faces, studying satellite feeds and thermal imagery. The air conditioning couldn't quite mask the smell of strong coffee and accumulated stress. Lily settled into a metal chair in the back row, her posture unconsciously perfect, shoulders back, spine straight, hands resting precisely on her tablet. Old habits died hard. Captain Connor Drake stood at the front of the room, 6'2" of muscled confidence wrapped in desert camouflage. His pointer tapped against the holographic display showing Kandahar Valley in 3-dimensional detail. Primary insertion here at grid 478. Fast rope descent at 0300 hours. Enemy positions marked in red. Approximately 15 fighters with RPGs and heavy machine guns. Drake's eyes swept the room, pausing briefly on Lily before dismissing her presence entirely. "We go in hard and fast. Overwhelming firepower. Standard extraction protocol. Textbook operation." Lily's jaw tightened. She'd run the terrain analysis 17 times. The enemy wasn't where Drake thought they were. They'd shifted positions 6 hours ago, creating a kill zone that would turn his textbook operation into a massacre. But she'd already tried to speak, already been dismissed. Lieutenant Colonel Heather Caldwell leaned forward, her intelligence officer insignia catching the light. "Captain Drake, have we confirmed those enemy positions are current? The last satellite pass was at 1400 hours. 6 hours is a long time for static defensive positions." Drake's smile carried just enough condescension to make Caldwell's lips thin. "Ma'am, with respect, these fighters aren't sophisticated enough for tactical repositioning. They find good cover and stay there. That's what makes them predictable." Lily's fingers moved across her tablet, pulling up thermal imaging from the past 4 hours. The heat signatures showed clear movement patterns, not random, not panicked, but methodically shifting to create overlapping fields of fire. Whoever commanded those enemy forces understood how American rescue operations worked. They were building a trap. "Commander Hawkins," Lily said quietly, raising one hand. "Sir, if I could show you the thermal progression—" "Lieutenant Morgan." Hawkins didn't look up from his own display. "We've established that you're sitting this out. That includes the planning phase." Silence settled over the room like a physical weight. 15 officers who'd spent decades in uniform watched a junior analyst get shut down. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded in agreement. In the corner, Warrant Officer Dylan Reeves, a communications specialist with kind eyes and prematurely gray hair, caught Lily's gaze and gave the slightest shake of his head. "Don't push it." Lily lowered her hand. Through the tablet screen, she watched thermal signatures of 18 American warriors who had maybe 40 minutes before the trap closed completely. Her fingers traced the edge of the device, feeling the slight vibration of incoming messages she couldn't acknowledge in this room. Drake continued his briefing. At first glance, it may seem like they're just attached, but this is one of the most meaningful signs of emotional safety and trust. This behavior comes from an ancient instinct. In a pack, dogs stick close to the one they trust most, the one who keeps them safe. At home, you are that person. When your dog follows you from room to room, they don't need you to talk or pay attention. What they need is your presence, a presence that tells them, "Here, beside you, I have nothing to fear." Some dogs lie right at the threshold, just to keep you in sight. Some rise each time you move, not out of fear, but to stay inside your safety zone. Others just lie nearby, not asking for attention, as if silence itself is a form of connection. And most importantly, this behavior is not dependency. His judgment had kept soldiers alive when lesser commanders would have gotten them killed. "We execute Drake's plan at 0300, Hawkins announced. "All personnel to staging areas by 0230. Rules of engagement standard for hostile territory. Any questions?" Lily's tablet vibrated again. The message frequency was one she'd programmed herself during a different lifetime. A failsafe for when official channels couldn't be trusted. She didn't need to look at the screen to know what it said. Someone in that valley recognized that she was here, in this room, listening to a plan that would get 18 men killed. "Dismissed," Hawkins said. Officers rose, gathering tablets and folders, already mentally preparing for the mission ahead. The talk would transform into pure operational mode in the next 6 hours. Communications locked down, security protocols maxed out. Every person focused on bringing those SEALs home. Lily remained seated as the room emptied. She wasn't technically dismissed. She was never technically included. Through the large display screens, she could see drone footage of the valley, rugged terrain, countless hiding spots, elevation advantages that turned conventional warfare into a nightmare. This was where Soviet forces had bled for a decade, where American forces had learned that technology couldn't always overcome geography and determination. "You still here, Lieutenant?" Heather Caldwell paused near Lily's chair, her expression unreadable. At 41, Caldwell had climbed the intelligence ranks through a combination of sharp analysis and sharper political instincts. She knew how to read situations, how to position herself, how to survive in a system that didn't forgive mistakes. "Just reviewing the mission parameters, ma'am," Lily replied, her accent carrying the slight lilt that marked her as different from most American officers. She'd worked hard to minimize it over the years, but stress always brought it back. Caldwell studied her for a long moment. "That thermal analysis you mentioned, was it significant?" "Potentially, ma'am. Potentially enough to change the mission approach." Lily met her gaze directly. "Potentially enough to save lives." Something flickered in Caldwell's eyes. Calculation, perhaps, or assessment. "You know what your problem is, Morgan? You think being right matters more than being part of the team. In this man's military, that's a fatal miscalculation." She walked away before Lily could respond. The task fell quiet except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of helicopter rotors warming up on the flight line. Lily was alone with her tablet, her analysis, and the growing certainty that she was about to watch good men die because pride mattered more than preparation. Her tablet vibrated a third time. She finally looked at the screen. Grid 479er. Enemy shifted. Ambush imminent. Phantom 7, need your eyes. Lily's hands went completely still. Grid 479er. That was 200 meters from where Drake planned his insertion. The message came from Mason Torres, call sign Raven. She'd saved his life in Syria 4 years ago during an operation that officially never happened. He was one of maybe 5 people who knew what she'd been before the demotion, before the exile to analyst positions, before she'd become someone commanders ordered to sit this out. She glanced toward the TOC entrance, empty. The security protocols meant she had maybe 3 minutes before the next shift rotation. Her fingers moved across the tablet, bypassing official channels, accessing frequencies that weren't supposed to exist on a junior officer's device. Before we continue with what happened next, we need to ask, where are you watching this from today? The story you're about to hear isn't just about one officer's decision to disobey orders. It's about the moment when institutional arrogance meets real-world consequences. If you believe that sometimes the quietest voice in the room knows the most important truth, hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss what happens when Lily decides that 18 American lives matter more than her career. The response took 11 seconds. 11 seconds during which Lily calculated the cost of what she was about to do. Court-martial, dishonorable discharge, criminal charges for unauthorized access to tactical communications, the destruction of whatever remained of her military career. Phantom 7, active, send current enemy positions. The data came through in compressed bursts, GPS coordinates, estimated force strength, weapons identified through sound analysis. Raven and his team had been tracking enemy movements for the past 4 hours while waiting for rescue. What they had observed matched Lily's thermal analysis perfectly. The enemy wasn't just waiting, they were orchestrating. Lily pulled up her three-dimensional terrain model, overlaying Raven's data with satellite imagery and historical analysis of similar ambush tactics. The picture that emerged made her chest tighten. Drake's insertion point would put his rescue force directly into a crossfire. The enemy had positioned heavy machine guns to cover all likely approach vectors. RPG teams occupied the high ground. And worst of all, they'd left an apparent escape route, one that led straight into a secondary kill zone. This wasn't random resistance. This was professional military thinking. She began mapping alternative approaches, her fingers moving across the tablet with the kind of automatic precision that came from thousands of hours of tactical planning. There was a route, narrow, difficult, requiring expert navigation and absolute timing, but it existed. A collapsed tunnel system that satellite imagery had marked as impassable, but ground-level thermal analysis showed it was partially intact, big enough for a small team to move through, emerging behind enemy positions instead of in front of them. Still analyzing? Lily's head snapped up. Dylan Reeves stood in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He approached slowly, setting 1 cup next to her tablet. His eyes flicked to her screen, taking in the tactical overlay in a single glance. "That's not the official mission plan," he observed quietly. "No. That's also not a frequency junior analysts are authorized to access." "No." Dylan settled into the chair beside her, his posture relaxed despite the weight of what he was seeing. At 37, he'd spent 15 years in communications, long enough to know when rules needed to be broken and smart enough to know how to break them without getting caught. "The official plan is going to get people killed," he said. "Not a question." "Yes, and you know how to prevent that." "I think so." Dylan sipped his coffee, his expression thoughtful. "You know what happens if you're wrong? If you override mission planning based on unauthorized intel and something goes sideways? Court-martial, discharge, probably federal prison for compromising operational security. And if you're right?" Lily finally looked at him. 18 men go home to their families. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of decisions that couldn't be unmade. Through the windows, Lily could see mechanics working on the Apache gunships, preparing the firepower that would support Drake's doomed rescue attempt. Good people doing good work in service of a plan that would fail because pride had silenced the one voice that might have prevented disaster. "I can't help you," Dylan said carefully. "Officially, I can't even know what you're planning. I understand, but hypothetically." He reached into his pocket and set a small radio on the table between them. Military grade, encrypted, operating on frequencies that wouldn't appear on standard monitoring. If someone needed to communicate with forces in the field without going through official channels, this would be one way to do it. Battery's good for 6 hours. After that, it's just dead electronics that someone misplaced during equipment inventory. Lily stared at the radio. Accepting it meant crossing a line she couldn't uncross. Using it meant committing to actions that would end her career at best and put her in prison at worst. But not using it meant listening to 18 men die while she sat safely in air-conditioned comfort, following orders that were wrong. She picked up the radio. Dylan stood, collecting his coffee cup. "I'm going to the mess hall. Going to be there for at least 30 minutes, long enough to eat, maybe catch up on some paperwork. When I get back, I'll probably discover that some equipment went missing during shift change. These things happen in high-tempo operations." He walked toward the door, pausing at the threshold. "For what it's worth, Lieutenant, I served with some of those SEALs. They're good men. They deserve someone fighting for them, even if that someone has to fight the whole damn system to do it. Then he was gone, and Lily was alone with her tablet, her analysis, and a radio that represented both salvation and destruction. She activated the encrypted frequency, her thumb hesitating over the transmit button. Once she pressed it, there was no going back. Once she committed to this path, she became something other than a junior analyst following orders. She became someone making tactical decisions without authorization, someone inserting herself into operations above her pay grade, someone trusting her judgment over the combined experience of senior officers who'd spent decades in uniform. The tablet vibrated again. Phantom 7, we're out of time. They're moving into final positions. Lily pressed the transmit button. Raven, this is Phantom 7. Confirm your team's current condition. The response was immediate, tinged with relief that someone was listening. Phantom 7, 18 personnel, 4 wounded, ammunition at 30%. We can hold current position for maybe 20 minutes. After that, we're overrun. 20 minutes, not enough time for official channels. Not enough time to convince Hawkins and Drake that their plan was fatally flawed. Not enough time for anything except direct action. Raven, I'm sending new coordinates to your tactical display. Grid 478 Alpha. It's a collapsed tunnel entrance. Thermal analysis shows partial integrity. Can you reach it? Silence. 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then, Phantom 7, that tunnel's been marked impassable. Engineering assessment from 2 months ago. Engineering assessment was satellite-based. Ground-level thermal imaging shows different story. The northern section collapsed, but southern passage maintains structural integrity. It's tight, it's dark, and it's going to require controlled breaching of the entrance. But it exits behind enemy positions. Another pause. Lily could imagine Raven sharing this information with his team, experienced operators weighing the risk of trusting analysis from someone they hadn't seen in 4 years, against the certainty of dying in their current position. Phantom 7, how confident are you in this assessment? 87%. And the other 13%? You die trying instead of dying waiting. A short, harsh laugh came through the speaker. Same old Phantom, always with the encouraging tactical briefings. All right, we're moving, but if this tunnel collapses on us, I'm haunting your career forever. Get in line, Lily muttered, her fingers already pulling up structural analysis of the tunnel entrance. The blockage was primarily loose rock and debris, unstable but not requiring heavy explosives. A shaped charge, precisely placed, could create an opening large enough for personnel movement without triggering a full collapse. Raven, you'll need controlled breaching, minimal explosive force. Do you have anyone qualified? Torres here is qualified, but I'm a little busy being the only medic keeping our wounded alive. Who's your best demo man? That would be Castellano, but he took shrapnel to the shoulder, can barely hold a rifle, much less set precision charges. Lily closed her eyes, running through options. Time was burning. Every second spent planning was a second closer to enemy forces closing in. Can Castellano talk someone through it, walk them through placement and timing? Maybe, if that someone has steady hands and doesn't mind the possibility of blowing themselves up. Put him on. The voice that came through was tight with pain, but professionally calm. Ma'am, this is Castellano. You want someone with no demo training to set shape charges in an unstable tunnel entrance? I want 18 SEALs alive. Tell me what you need. Over the next 8 minutes, Lily walked through the most intense technical instruction of her life. Castellano described charge placement, timing sequences, safety protocols. Lily relayed it to whoever Raven had designated as their volunteer. She could hear background noise, the occasional crack of rifle fire, urgent whispered commands, the sound of men preparing to bet their lives on the tactical judgment of an analyst they'd never met. Modern military operations depend on secure, reliable communication technology that can function in the most hostile environments. Professional-grade encrypted tablets and satellite communication devices have become essential tools for tactical coordination, allowing commanders to maintain real-time situational awareness even in remote combat zones. These advanced systems integrate GPS tracking, thermal imaging display, and military-standard encryption protocols that ensure operational security. For personnel working in high-stakes environments where split-second decisions determine outcomes, Having access to technology that won't fail under pressure isn't just convenient, it's mission critical. Charges set, came the report. Young voice trying hard to sound calm. Initiating in 3, 2, 1. The explosion translated through the radio as a muffled crack, then silence. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. Phantom 7, this is Raven, we're through. Tunnels intact, moving now. Lily let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Raven, you've got 12 minutes before official rescue force arrives at primary insertion point. The enemy is going to realize you've moved. They'll adjust. Stay quiet, stay low, and for God's sake, stay together. Copy that. And Phantom, thanks. The radio went silent. Lily set it down, her hands trembling slightly with adrenaline and the crushing weight of what she'd just done. 18 men were moving through an unstable tunnel based on her analysis. If she was wrong, if the thermal imaging had missed something, if the structural assessment was flawed, if any one of 1,000 variables went wrong, they would die. And it would be her fault. She pulled up the tactical display, watching the official mission's timeline count down. 0230, staging complete. 0245, final equipment checks. 0300, insertion. The door to the Tau C opened. Lily's hands moved automatically, closing sensitive screens, shifting to approved mission data. But it wasn't Dylan returning. It wasn't anyone she'd expected. Commander Bradley Hawkins stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Behind him, Lieutenant Colonel Heather Caldwell and Captain Connor Drake filled the entrance. 3 senior officers, here in the Tactical Operations Center when they should have been with their teams, preparing for mission execution. Lieutenant Morgan. Hawkins's voice carried the kind of quiet intensity that made junior officers stand straighter. We need to have a conversation about unauthorized communications. Lily's career ended in that moment. She knew it with absolute certainty. They'd been monitoring frequencies. They'd seen her communications with Raven. They knew what she'd done. She stood, coming to attention. Sir. At ease, Lieutenant. Hawkins moved into the room, his eyes taking in the tablet, the radio Dylan had left. The tactical displays showing analysis that went far beyond what a junior analyst should have access to. You've been in communication with the SEAL team. Not a question. A statement. Yes, sir. Without authorization. Yes, sir. Providing tactical guidance that contradicts the approved mission plan. Yes, sir. Caldwell stepped forward, her tablet displaying what appeared to be communication logs. Lieutenant Morgan, do you have any idea the severity of what you've done? Unauthorized access to tactical frequencies, interference with approved operations, potential compromise of operational security. Yes, ma'am. Drake's anger was more open, less controlled. You overstepped, Lieutenant. You undermined mission command. You inserted yourself into an operation you were explicitly ordered to sit out. Lily met his gaze directly. Yes, sir. And you did it knowing the consequences? Yes, sir. Hawkins circled the table, studying the thermal analysis displayed on Lily's tablet. His finger traced the heat signature patterns she'd been tracking for the past 6 hours. This shows enemy repositioning. Yes, sir. Repositioning that would place them directly in our insertion path. Yes, sir. And you determined this was significant enough to violate direct orders? Lily hesitated. This was the moment, the choice between safe lies and dangerous truth. Sir, the approved mission plan would have resulted in significant casualties among both rescue forces and the trapped personnel. The thermal analysis showed clear evidence of coordinated ambush tactics. I made the assessment that immediate action was required to prevent loss of life. The silence that followed felt dense enough to crush bone. 3 senior officers stared at a junior lieutenant who just admitted to everything they accused her of, and defended it as the right decision. Caldwell broke first. Commander Hawkins, this is clearly insubordination. Lieutenant Morgan needs to be removed from duty immediately and placed under arrest pending investigation. Agreed, Drake added. She's contaminated the operational environment. We can't trust any analysis coming from someone willing to freelance like this. Hawkins didn't respond to either of them. He continued studying Lily's displays, his expression impossible to read. This tunnel route. You're confident it's passable? 87% confidence, sir. Based on? Ground-level thermal imaging combined with historical structural analysis and current geological assessment. The tunnel was built by Soviet forces in 1984. Original construction was robust. Primary collapse occurred in the northern section during coalition operations in 2009. Southern passage maintained integrity. Recent thermal scans show airflow consistent with open passage. And you sent 18 SEALs into this tunnel based on 87% confidence? Yes, sir. That's a 13% chance you just killed them all. Lily's throat tightened. Yes, sir. Hawkins finally looked up from the tablet. And what was their survival percentage staying in current position? The question hung in the air. Lily had run those numbers 17 times. 0, sir. With the enemy repositioned as shown in thermal analysis, their current defensive position would have been overrun within 20 minutes. So you chose 87% over 0%. Yes, sir. Drake stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. Commander, with respect, we can't validate this assessment during active operations. The approved plan was developed by experienced officers with decades of combined combat experience. This analyst decided her judgment was better than ours. Actually, Captain, that's exactly what I'm trying to validate. Hawkins moved to the main tactical display, overlaying official mission planning with Lily's thermal analysis. The differences were stark. Official intelligence showed enemy positions that were 6 hours old. Lily's real-time tracking showed a completely different deployment, one that turned the approved insertion point into a kill zone. Caldwell moved closer, her analytical mind engaging despite her earlier anger. If this thermal analysis is accurate, our rescue force would have been ambushed the moment they established their perimeter. Yes, ma'am, Lily confirmed, and the enemy position shown here. Caldwell pointed to concentrations of heat signatures. These aren't random defensive positions. This is deliberate tactical placement designed to channel our forces into predetermined kill zones. Yes, ma'am. Which means we're not facing random insurgents. We're facing professional military thinking. That was my assessment, ma'am. Drake wasn't convinced. Or it means this analyst is seeing patterns that don't exist. Thermal imaging isn't perfect. Heat signatures can be misinterpreted. We could be looking at civilian activity, equipment malfunction, atmospheric distortion. Hawkins pulled up communication logs from the past hour. According to this, Lieutenant Morgan has been in direct contact with the SEAL team. They confirmed enemy repositioning based on direct observation. Unverified reports from personnel under extreme stress, Drake countered. Not reliable intelligence. The tactical display updated. 0255, 5 minutes until official insertion. The talk began filling with personnel, communication specialists, intelligence analysts, medical coordinators, all the support staff required for a complex rescue operation. They entered, saw senior officers in intense discussion, and immediately understood something was wrong. Ethan Pierce, the cybersecurity specialist, approached with a tablet displaying security protocols. Commander Hawkins, I need to report unauthorized access to encrypted tactical frequencies. The breach originated from this terminal. He gestured toward Lily's position. I'm aware, Mr. Pierce. Pierce hesitated, clearly expecting a different response. Sir, protocol requires immediate lockdown and security review. Note the breach in your report. We'll address it after mission completion. But, sir, after mission completion, Mr. Pierce. The young specialist retreated, confused but obedient. Around them, the talk transformed into full operational mode. Massive displays showed live feeds from multiple sources, drones overhead, thermal imaging, communications monitoring. The machinery of modern warfare humming into lethal efficiency. 0258. Hawkins made a decision. Captain Drake, delay insertion by 5 minutes. Sir, I want verification of enemy positions before we commit our rescue force. Drake's jaw tightened. Commander, we've got a tight timeline. Every minute we delay increases risk to the trapped personnel. And going in blind increases risk to the rescue force. 5-minute delay. Use the time to get updated intelligence from the SEAL team. I want their current assessment of enemy positions based on direct observation. It wasn't a request. Yes, sir. Drake moved to the communication station, issuing new orders. Around him, carefully choreographed timing shifted. Helicopter pilots adjusted schedules. Support teams recalibrated. The entire operation flexed to accommodate 5 minutes that might mean everything. Caldwell studied Lily with new intensity. Lieutenant, your service record shows you completed basic officer training 4 years ago. Standard analyst track. Nothing in your file suggests tactical operations background. Yes, ma'am. So, where did you learn to conduct this level of terrain analysis? Self-study, ma'am. Tactical manuals, historical case studies, terrain modeling software. That's not self-study. That's professional-grade tactical planning. Lily didn't respond. Couldn't respond. Because the truth was classified at levels that nobody in this room, except possibly Hawkins, had clearance to access. 0300, insertion time. But Drake's rescue force held position, waiting for intelligence confirmation. The radio crackled with frustrated reports from pilots circling in darkness, ready to execute, but held back by orders they didn't understand. Then Raven's voice cut through, transmitted on official frequencies now. Control, this is Trident Actual. Current position grid 478 Alpha. Have visual confirmation of enemy positions. They've established ambush formation at original rescue insertion point. Repeat, primary insertion point is compromised. The TOC went silent. Drake stared at the radio as if it had personally betrayed him. Caldwell's face went pale. Hawkins showed no visible reaction, but Lily saw his hands tighten slightly on the edge of the tactical display. Trident Actual, confirm enemy positions. Drake's voice was professional but strained. Control, enemy forces approximately 150 personnel, heavy weapons emplaced on high ground, RPG teams covering all approach vectors. This was a prepared ambush position. If we'd stayed in our original location, we'd be dead. If your rescue force had inserted at primary point, they'd be dead too. Someone had to say it. Lieutenant Colonel Caldwell did. Commander Hawkins, if Lieutenant Morgan's analysis hadn't been accurate, if the SEAL team hadn't moved when they did, we'd be looking at catastrophic casualties on both sides. Hawkins nodded slowly. Captain Drake, redirect insertion to support Trident Actual's new position. I want those SEALs extracted within the next 10 minutes. Yes, sir. Drake moved with mechanical precision, updating flight plans, adjusting support fire coordinates. Professional competence taking over, even as his tactical judgment had been proven catastrophically wrong. The next 10 minutes unfolded like practiced choreography. Apache gunships providing suppressive fire, transport helicopters threading through mountain valleys, SEAL team members moving with precision toward extraction points. And through it all, Lily sat at her terminal, watching lives saved through analysis that had almost been dismissed entirely. 0314, first helicopter landed. 6 SEALs aboard. 0317, second helicopter, 7 more. 0319, final extraction. 5 SEALs, including Raven. Control, this is Viper 1. All personnel extracted, 0 casualties, returning to base. The talk erupted in controlled celebration. Professionals who'd been watching a nightmare scenario unfold now experienced the profound relief of mission success. Handshakes, quick smiles, the release of tension that had been building for hours. But Lily felt none of it, because Hawkins was looking at her. And in his eyes, she saw questions that couldn't be answered in a room full of witnesses. We've put tremendous effort into researching every detail of this story. If you're as gripped by this as we are, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. What happens in the next few minutes will show you exactly why some of the military's most crucial decisions come from the people nobody's listening to. Lieutenant Morgan, Hawkins' voice cut through the celebration. My office, now. The talk fell silent again. Every person present understood what was coming. Lily had saved 18 lives. She'd also violated every protocol, ignored direct orders, and demonstrated that the approved plan would have failed catastrophically. Success didn't erase insubordination. If anything, it made her actions more problematic, because now she couldn't be dismissed as simply wrong. Lily stood, her movements precise and controlled. She was aware of every eye following her as she walked toward Hawkins's office. Some gazes carried respect. Others showed concern. A few reflected anger at someone who'd made them all look incompetent. Caldwell and Drake followed without being asked. This wasn't a private meeting. This was official business that required witnesses and documentation. Hawkins' office was small, functional, dominated by a desk covered in operational planning materials. A single window looked out over the airfield, where helicopters were just now touching down with their precious cargo of rescued SEALs. "Close the door," Hawkins ordered. Caldwell complied. The four of them stood in the confined space, 3 senior officers and 1 junior lieutenant whose career was balanced on the edge of a blade. "Lieutenant Morgan." Hawkins settled behind his desk. "You directly violated my orders." "Yes, sir." "You accessed unauthorized communications frequencies." "Yes, sir." "You provided tactical guidance to personnel in the field without proper authorization." "Yes, sir." "You undermined approved mission planning." "Yes, sir." Drake leaned forward. "And you did all of this knowing it could result in court-martial." "Yes, sir." "So the question is why?" Hawkins said quietly. "Why risk everything? What made you think your judgment was better than the combined experience of officers who've spent decades in combat operations?" Lily met his gaze. This was the moment. Tell a safe lie or dangerous truth. "Sir, I didn't think my judgment was better. I thought my analysis was more current. The approved plan was based on intelligence that was 6 hours old. In dynamic tactical situations, 6 hours is an eternity. Enemy forces had repositioned. The SEAL team had direct observation confirming the repositioning. The only question was whether to trust real-time analysis over established procedure. And you chose analysis. I chose to prevent unnecessary casualties, sir." Caldwell pulled out her tablet. "Lieutenant, I've been reviewing your personnel file. You graduated from officer training 4 years ago, top of your class in tactical analysis. But there's something strange. Your service record before that is minimal. Basic training, some specialized schooling, then a 2-year gap that's classified above my clearance level." Lily's pulse jumped. "Yes, ma'am. What happened during those 2 years?" "That information is classified, ma'am." "Classified at what level?" "Above my authority to discuss, ma'am." Hawkins and Caldwell exchanged glances. Drake looked confused, not understanding what they were seeing. But experienced officers recognized the pattern: service records that disappeared into classification, gaps that couldn't be explained, skills that exceeded official training. "Lieutenant," Hawkins said carefully, "are you currently assigned to analyst positions?" "Yes, sir." "Is that your primary military occupational specialty?" "Currently, yes, sir." "Currently." He let the word hang. "What was your MOS before current assignment?" Lily hesitated. This was the line. Cross it, and everything changed. Stay silent, and she maintained operational security. But these officers had just watched her save 18 lives through tactical planning that shouldn't exist in a junior analyst's skill set. They knew something was wrong with the official story. "Sir, I'm not authorized to discuss previous assignments without proper clearance verification." Drake's confusion turned to suspicion. "Commander, what are we dealing with here? Is she intelligence? Some kind of special operations liaison?" Before Hawkins could respond, the office door opened. Everyone turned to see Colonel Audrey Thornton enter without knocking. At 56, she carried the kind of authority that came from 3 decades of service in positions that rarely appeared on organizational charts. Her insignia identified her as a senior logistics coordinator, but Lily knew better. "Excuse the interruption, Commander Hawkins." Thornton's voice was pleasant, professional. "But I need to borrow Lieutenant Morgan for a moment. Official business that can't wait." Hawkins studied her. "Colonel, we're in the middle of a disciplinary proceeding. I'm aware, and I'm exercising my authority to temporarily suspend that proceeding pending review of classified materials relevant to the case." "What classified materials?" Thornton's smile didn't reach her eyes. "The kind classified above your current clearance, Commander. No disrespect intended." The room went very still. Hawkins had operational command of forces in active theater. Having a logistics colonel tell him something was above his clearance was unusual enough to trigger immediate questions about what was really happening. "Lieutenant Morgan, you're with me." Thornton gestured toward the door. Lily looked at Hawkins, seeking confirmation. He nodded slowly, recognizing forces in motion that he couldn't control. "You're dismissed, Lieutenant, but this conversation isn't over." "Yes, sir." Thornton led her out of the office, through the TIAC where everyone pretended not to watch, and into a smaller briefing room that was designated for classified discussions. She activated security protocols that sealed the room and blocked all electronic monitoring. Then she turned to Lily, and her entire demeanor changed. The pleasant logistics officer disappeared, replaced by someone whose eyes carried the weight of operations conducted in shadows. Phantom 7. Not a question, a statement. Lily's throat went dry. Ma'am, that was well done. Risky, potentially career-ending, but effective. 18 SEALs extracted with 0 casualties because you trusted your analysis over established authority. I just did what needed to be done, ma'am. No, you did what you were trained to do before someone decided you were too dangerous to keep in operational status. Thornton pulled out a tablet displaying files that Lily recognized, her real service record, the one that showed 2 years of advanced training in strategic intelligence operations. The one that detailed missions conducted under deep cover in places like Syria, where she'd saved 47 Delta operators during an 11-hour siege. The operation in Al-Hasaka, Thornton continued, when you refused orders to strike what intelligence claimed was an enemy command center. You identified it as a civilian school based on architectural analysis and thermal imaging. You were correct. But refusing a direct order from a 2-star general tends to have consequences. Yes, ma'am? They gave you a choice: quiet demotion to analyst positions with your record sealed, or a court-martial with full media attention that would expose intelligence failures at the highest levels. You chose the quiet option. I chose to continue serving, ma'am. Thornton studied her for a long moment. Tonight proved what I've been telling Pentagon for the past 6 months. Burying talented officers in dead-end positions because they made command uncomfortable doesn't serve anyone's interests. You just conducted a successful tactical operation while officially forbidden from operational planning. That's a problem. What happens now? Now? Thornton smiled slightly. Now, Commander Hawkins is going to have a very interesting conversation with his superiors about why a junior analyst was able to see tactical realities that his experienced officers missed. He's going to recommend you for immediate operational reinstatement. And he's going to do it because keeping you in analyst positions is now clearly more dangerous than putting you back in operational status. And my unauthorized communications will be classified as emergency tactical coordination during a crisis situation. Dylan Reeves will receive a minor reprimand for misplacing equipment. You'll receive a formal commendation for initiative in saving lives. Everyone will pretend this was all part of normal operational flexibility. Lily felt something shift in her chest. Hope, maybe, or just the relief of not facing prison. Why are you telling me this? Because in about 6 hours, you're going to receive orders transferring you back to JSOC. Tier 1 operations, full tactical authority. Someone very high up the chain of command has been watching your career. They've decided that exile has lasted long enough. Military service members and their families face unique financial challenges that require specialized protection strategies. Comprehensive life insurance policies designed specifically for active duty personnel provide coverage that accounts for deployment risks, combat zone assignments, and the long-term security needs of military families. These specialized financial products often include provisions for disability coverage, survivor benefits, and investment options that help service members build wealth even during extended deployments. Understanding these financial tools can mean the difference between leaving your family secure and leaving them vulnerable during the most difficult times. Thornton stood to leave, then paused. One more thing, Phantom. Those 18 SEALs you saved? Raven sent a message through unofficial channels. He said to tell you the team wants you for future operations. They trust you with their lives. After Thornton left, Lily sat alone in the secured briefing room, processing everything that had happened in the past 12 hours. She'd violated orders to save lives. She'd proven that the system's judgment was wrong, and somehow, instead of ending her career, she'd resurrected it. Her tablet vibrated. A message on the encrypted frequency, the one that Raven used for communications that couldn't go through official channels. Phantom 7. We're out. 0 casualties. You're a legend. When you're back in operational status, we want you on our team. She started to reply, then stopped. Because Hawkins had just entered the briefing room, his expression unreadable. Lieutenant Morgan, I just had a very enlightening conversation with Colonel Thornton and several people at JSOC whose names I'm not authorized to know. Would you like to explain to me exactly who you are? Lily stood, coming to attention. Sir, I'm a strategic intelligence officer, formerly assigned to JSOC Tier 1 operations. Call sign, Phantom 7. I conducted 14 successful missions with 0 casualties under my command before being reassigned to analyst positions following a disagreement with command regarding targeting protocols. A disagreement. I refused an order to strike a target that I identified as a civilian school rather than an enemy command center. My analysis was correct, but refusing the order violated chain of command protocols. Hawkins nodded slowly. And they buried you in analyst positions rather than face the publicity of court-martialing an officer who prevented a war crime. That's one way to interpret it, sir. Is there another interpretation? I could have followed orders and killed 43 children. I chose my conscience over my career. I'd make the same choice again. The silence stretched. Hawkins moved to the window, looking out at the airfield where the rescued SEALs were now debriefing. You know what the hardest part of command is, Lieutenant? It's not making tactical decisions. It's knowing when to trust people who see things differently than you do. I almost didn't give you those 5 minutes to verify enemy positions. Almost insisted we stick to the approved plan. You made the right call, sir. I made it 5 minutes before it would have been too late. That's not something I'm proud of. He turned back to face her. I'm recommending you for the Navy Commendation Medal for tactical innovation under crisis conditions. I'm also recommending immediate reinstatement to operational status. And I'm writing a memo to every commander in this theater explaining that when Phantom 7 provides tactical analysis, they should probably listen. Sir, that's not necessary. It's absolutely necessary. Because what happened tonight shouldn't have happened. You shouldn't have needed to violate orders to save lives. The system should have been flexible enough to recognize that you had critical intelligence. It wasn't. That's on me, and every other commander who was too proud to listen to the quietest voice in the room. This story is reaching its critical turning point. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because what's about to happen will redefine everything you thought you knew about military command structure. Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories like this one. Trust us, you'll want to see how this ends. 3 days later, Lily stood in front of 18 Navy SEALs who'd assembled in a hangar at Bagram Air Base. They'd requested this meeting through official channels, a rare occurrence that had generated curiosity throughout the base. When she entered the hangar, they all came to attention and saluted with the kind of precision that marked elite warriors. Raven stepped forward, his face still showing the strain of their ordeal. Major Morgan, it's still Lieutenant Raven, not according to the orders that came through this morning. He smiled. Pentagon reinstated you with full rank restoration. Apparently someone very high up decided that having you stuck in analyst hell was a waste of talent. Lily felt her chest tighten. Major. The rank she'd held before refusing that order in Syria. The rank that came with operational authority and tactical respect. We wanted to give you something, Raven continued. He pulled out a challenge coin, the kind special operations forces created to honor significant events. This one showed coordinates for Al-Hasaka on one side. On the other, Phantom 7. We owe you everything. 47 souls in Syria, Raven said quietly. 18 more here. That's 65 Americans who are alive because you trusted your analysis over authority. That's 65 families who still have someone coming home. We wanted you to know that we see you. We recognize what you did. And when the brass forgets or tries to bury you again, you've got a whole community of warriors who will remind them that you're worth listening to. The other SEALs stepped forward, each placing a hand on the challenge coin in a gesture of solidarity that transcended rank or regulation. These were men who understood sacrifice, who knew what it meant to make decisions that could end careers or save lives. Major Morgan, one of them said, younger voice, the one who'd set the breaching charges based on her instructions. I just want to say, you walked me through placing those charges like you were standing right next to me. I've never been so scared in my life, but your voice was so calm, so certain. You made me believe I could do it. You did do it, Lily replied. I just provided the technical guidance. You had the courage to act. That's what leadership is, Raven said. Giving people the knowledge and confidence to do things they didn't think they could do. You've been doing that for years, whether the system recognized it or not. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Hawkins, Lieutenant Colonel Caldwell, and Captain Drake. The SEALs didn't break formation, but their body language shifted slightly, Recognition of senior officers combined with loyalty to someone who'd proven herself under fire. Major Morgan. Hawkins used her restored rank deliberately. I wanted to deliver this personally. He handed her official orders, printed on Pentagon letterhead. You're being reassigned to JSOC as Senior Strategic Intelligence Officer, full operational authority. You'll be working directly with Special Operations Forces on high-priority missions, effective immediately. Lily scanned the orders, seeing authorization that went far beyond anything she'd held before. This wasn't just restoration, this was promotion into positions that only went to officers with proven track records and absolute trust. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll use this authority more wisely than I used mine, Hawkins replied. Say you'll remember that sometimes the right decision means ignoring the people who outrank you. Say you'll never let bureaucracy silence tactical reality. I will, sir. Caldwell stepped forward, her expression carrying something that might have been respect or possibly regret. Major, I owe you an apology. I let professional jealousy cloud my judgment. You tried to warn us, and I dismissed you because I didn't like that a junior officer saw what I missed. That was ego, and it almost cost lives. We all make mistakes, ma'am. What matters is what we do after. Spoken like someone who's learned that lesson the hard way. Caldwell extended her hand. If you ever need intelligence support for future operations, you have my direct line. I'd rather work with someone I can learn from than someone who makes me feel comfortable. Drake was last. His apology came harder, forced through pride that didn't yield easily. Major, I was wrong about the mission plan, about your analysis, about a lot of things. Those SEALs are alive because you trusted your judgment when I didn't trust mine. That's a lesson I won't forget. Thank you, sir. And for what it's worth, your extraction execution was flawless. Good tactics are only valuable if they are implemented well. You did that. It was a generous assessment, and everyone knew it, but Drake nodded, accepting the gesture of professional respect. Raven cleared his throat. Major, there's one more thing. The team took a vote. We want to request you for our next operation. We've got something brewing in Eastern Europe that requires exactly your skill set. Terrain analysis, tactical planning, someone who can see patterns nobody else notices. Lily felt something shift inside her. Not just gratitude or relief, but purpose. For 4 years, she'd been sidelined, told her talents weren't needed, ordered to sit out the missions that mattered. Now she was being invited back to the work she'd been trained for, the work she excelled at, the work that saved lives. When do we deploy? 2 weeks, Ukraine border region. Details are classified, but let's just say there's a facility that we need to either secure or eliminate, and the terrain analysis is beyond anything standard planning can handle. Career military personnel often require advanced specialized training in strategic analysis, tactical coordination, and operational planning. Professional certification programs in military intelligence, cybersecurity, and emergency management provide credentials that enhance both active duty effectiveness and post-service career opportunities. These programs combine practical tactical training with academic rigor, offering service members the expertise needed to excel in increasingly technical military environments. Additionally, legal consultation services specializing in military justice and veterans' rights ensure that service members understand their protections and options when facing career-defining decisions. I'll review the briefing materials and have preliminary analysis ready before we meet, Lily replied. But I need to ask, are you sure about this, working with someone who has a history of refusing orders? Raven's smile was genuine. Major, we're not asking for someone who blindly follows orders. We're asking for someone who makes the right call even when it's hard. Someone who will tell us the truth even if we don't want to hear it. Someone who values our lives more than their career advancement. That's you. The other SEALs nodded in agreement. These weren't junior officers trying to make rank. These were experienced operators who'd survived by learning to recognize genuine competence when they saw it. Then I'm in, Lily said, and this time I won't have to hide in the back row. The hangar doors opened, revealing the Afghan sunset painting the mountains in shades of red and gold. Somewhere out there, enemy forces were regrouping, planning, preparing for the next engagement. And somewhere in the Pentagon, staff officers were drafting orders for missions that would send warriors into harm's way based on intelligence that might or might not reflect ground truth. But now there was one more voice in the conversation. One more officer authorized to speak tactical reality to command authority. One more person willing to risk everything to prevent unnecessary casualties. Dylan Reeves appeared at the edge of the gathered personnel, his expression showing quiet satisfaction. He caught Lily's eye and gave a subtle nod, the kind of acknowledgement that passed between people who'd taken risks together and survived. As the SEALs dispersed to prepare for their next mission, Hawkins lingered. "Major, I want you to know something. What happened here wasn't just about saving those 18 men. It was about challenging a system that had become too rigid, too confident in its own judgment. You forced us to question assumptions we didn't even know we were making. That's valuable beyond any single mission." "Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Thank whoever gave you the courage to trust yourself when everyone else was telling you to stay quiet. That kind of moral conviction is rare. Hold on to it, even when it's easier to compromise." After he left, Lily stood alone in the hangar, looking out at the mountains. She thought about the 47 people she'd saved in Syria, the 18 she'd saved here, the countless others who might benefit from a military culture that valued tactical reality over bureaucratic comfort. Her tablet vibrated. A message on a frequency she didn't recognize. High-level encryption, Pentagon origin. Major Morgan. Reference Operation Winter Ghost. Your preliminary analysis is requested for facility identification in Eastern Europe. Satellite imagery attached. This is time-sensitive. Respond when secure. She opened the attached files. Satellite images of a facility near the Ukraine border. Heavy security. Underground components. Heat signatures that didn't match the official designation as an agricultural research center. This was what she'd been trained for. This was why the Pentagon had finally decided that burying her in analyst positions was more dangerous than letting her operate with full authority. Lily began her analysis, her fingers moving across the tablet with practiced efficiency. She noticed patterns in the facility's layout that suggested military rather than civilian design. She identified defensive positions that indicated expectation of hostile approach. She recognized the signature of an operation that was being conducted in shadows, away from oversight. As she worked, Dylan appeared beside her again. "Congratulations on the promotion and the new assignment. Sounds like you'll be deployed pretty quickly. 2 weeks. Just enough time to update your will and say goodbye to the few people who actually know your real story." "About that," Lily looked at him directly. "Thank you for the radio, for trusting me, for taking a risk that could have ended your career just to give me the tools to do what needed to be done." "I didn't do it for you," Dylan replied. "I did it for those SEALs, and for every future operation where someone in this room might have the right answer but not the right rank to be heard. Sometimes the system needs people willing to break it in order to fix it. Is that what I did? Break the system? You exposed its flaws. That's different and more valuable. If this story moved you, we have 2 more incredible accounts waiting on your screen right now. Stories of courage, sacrifice, and the moment when doing the right thing means risking everything. Click to watch next, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss these untold stories of American heroism. 3 hours later, Lily completed her preliminary analysis of Operation Winter Ghost. What she found made her pause, then recheck her data 3 times to be certain. The facility in the satellite imagery wasn't an agricultural research center. It was a weapons development complex, and the heat signatures she'd identified weren't from industrial processes. They were from underground testing that matched the thermal profile of specific weapon systems that weren't supposed to exist anymore. She encrypted her findings and sent them to the Pentagon contact who'd requested the analysis. Then she sat back, knowing that her report would likely trigger a chain of events leading to the very operation Raven had mentioned, the mission in Eastern Europe, the terrain that required her specific expertise. Her phone rang, unknown number. She answered anyway. Phantom 7. The voice on the other end was familiar, but unexpected. "This is Osprey 3. Lily's breath caught. Osprey 3 was a call sign from her Syria days. An operator she'd worked with during the Al-Hasaka siege, someone who'd officially been listed as killed in action 2 years ago. "Osprey, you're supposed to be dead. Only officially. Listen, that facility you just analyzed, it's more complicated than Pentagon knows. There are multiple operatives active in that region. Some of them carry Phantom designations. I need you to understand, when you deploy with that SEAL team, You're not just doing facility reconnaissance. You're walking into something much larger. What do you mean, multiple Phantom operatives? The program didn't end when you were demoted. It went deeper underground. There are at least 6 other officers operating under Phantom protocols in various theaters. Some of them are working missions that overlap with Winter Ghost. You need to be prepared for the possibility that, when you get there, you might encounter others from the old team. Lily's mind raced. Why are you telling me this? Because you're being brought back for a reason. Someone high up thinks the Phantom program needs to be reactivated in official capacity. You're the test case. If you succeed with this SEAL team operation, it opens doors for bringing the others back too. But if you fail, if this operation goes sideways, it buries Phantom forever. That's a lot of pressure. You've handled worse. Al-Hasaka was 11 hours of impossible decisions. You made every single one correctly. This is just another mission where the stakes are higher than they're telling you. Osprey, are you going to be there? In Eastern Europe? I can't confirm or deny, but if you see someone who seems to know terrain they shouldn't know, who makes tactical decisions that feel familiar, trust your instincts, Phantom. Some of us never stop serving. We just stop being visible. The call ended before Lily could ask more questions. She sat in the growing darkness of the Afghan evening, processing information that changed everything about her upcoming deployment. This wasn't just about proving she could operate effectively with Special Operations Forces. It was about resurrecting a program that had been officially dismantled but never truly ended. Her tablet displayed the challenge coin image Raven had given her. 65 lives saved. But how many more were out there, depending on Phantom operatives who were operating in shadows deeper than official classification? She thought about the choice she'd made in Syria, refusing to bomb that school, accepting career destruction rather than compromise her principles. That decision had seemed like the end of everything. Instead, it had been preparation for a longer game that she was only now beginning to understand. Rank is just a title, she'd told Raven. Real leadership is earning trust when no one's watching. But what about earning trust when everyone's watching? What about rebuilding a reputation that had been systematically destroyed? What about proving that moral conviction could coexist with operational effectiveness? The mountains of Afghanistan held their secrets in the gathering darkness. Somewhere in those valleys, enemy forces were planning their next operation. Somewhere in Pentagon war rooms, staff officers were designing missions that would send warriors into danger based on intelligence that might be hours or days old. And somewhere in the shadows, Phantom operatives were conducting operations that officially didn't exist, making decisions that would never be acknowledged, saving lives that would never know who to thank. Lily Morgan, call sign Phantom 7, was about to rejoin their ranks, not as someone hiding from consequences, but as an officer authorized to speak truth to power, authorized to refuse orders when orders were wrong, authorized to save lives even when saving lives meant breaking rules. She looked at her tablet one more time, studying the facility in Eastern Europe, the mission that waited, the test that would determine not just her future, but the future of every Phantom operative still serving in silence. 2 weeks until deployment. 14 days to prepare for an operation that carried weight far beyond its tactical objectives. 14 days to transform from someone who'd been ordered to sit out into someone who would never sit out again. The night air carried the sound of helicopters returning from patrol, warriors completing missions based on orders they trusted, because someone in authority said those orders were right. Most of the time, that trust was justified. Most of the time. But for the times when it wasn't, when orders were wrong and lives hung in the balance, there needed to be people willing to stand up and say so. People who valued truth over promotion. People who understood that real leadership meant accepting consequences for doing what was right. Lily shut down her tablet and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would bring more briefings, more preparation, more steps toward a mission that would prove whether the system had truly learned its lesson. But tonight, she could rest knowing that 65 people were alive because she'd trusted her judgment over established authority. 65 families who still had someone coming home. 65 reasons why moral conviction mattered more than career advancement. And in 2 weeks, there would be another operation. Another chance to prove that the quietest voice in the room sometimes speaks the most important truth. Another opportunity to save lives through tactical reality that refused to be silenced by bureaucratic comfort. Phantom 7 was back in operational status, and the shadows where she'd learned to serve were about to get a lot more crowded. 2 weeks disappeared faster than Lily expected. The days blurred together. Tactical briefings, equipment preparation, coordination meetings with the SEAL team that would become her operational family. Raven introduced her to the full roster. 18 warriors who'd learned to trust each other through shared danger and absolute honesty. Major Morgan, this is our team lead, Lieutenant Commander Jack Rivers. Raven gestured toward a man in his late 30s whose face carried the kind of weathered calm that came from leading men through situations where hesitation meant death. Rivers, this is Phantom 7, the officer who kept us alive in Kandahar. Rivers extended his hand, his grip firm but not challenging. Major, Raven says you can see terrain patterns that our best analysts miss. Says you think 3 moves ahead of enemy positioning. That true? I analyze probabilities and create contingency plans, Lily replied. Whether that constitutes thinking ahead depends on whether the enemy behaves predictably. A slight smile touched Rivers' mouth. Diplomatic answer. I like that you're not overselling. We've worked with too many intelligence officers who promise certainty and deliver speculation. If you tell me something's probable, I can plan around that. If you tell me something's certain and you're wrong, people die. I don't deal in certainty, Commander. Only calculated risks. Good, because this mission in Eastern Europe is nothing but calculated risks stacked on top of uncertain intelligence. Rivers pulled up a holographic display showing satellite imagery of their target. This facility officially doesn't exist. Our orders officially don't exist. If something goes sideways, Pentagon officially never heard of us. Lily studied the imagery with the intensity that had become her trademark. The facility sprawled across 12 acres of forested terrain near the Ukraine border. Surface structures suggested agricultural research. Underground thermal signatures told a different story entirely. Commander, permission to speak freely about tactical assessment? You're the intelligence officer, Major. Your job is tactical assessment. Speak. This facility wasn't designed for research. The building layout follows military hardening protocols. Reinforced walls, limited access points, defensive positioning that assumes hostile approach. The underground components show heat signatures consistent with weapons testing or specialized manufacturing. Rivers nodded. Pentagon thinks it's a covert weapons development site. Possibly nuclear, possibly biological, possibly something we haven't categorized yet. Our mission is threefold. Identify what's being produced, secure any intelligence materials, and if necessary, destroy the facility completely. And if we encounter resistance, rules of engagement allow for defensive action and mission completion by any means necessary, which is Pentagon's way of saying we're authorized to start a small war if that's what it takes. Lily pulled up terrain analysis, her fingers moving across the display with practiced efficiency. The approach vectors are problematic. Standard insertion points would expose the team to observation from guard towers here and here. She highlighted positions that satellite imagery had missed. But there's a drainage system, runs from this forested area to within 50 meters of the primary structure. Built during Soviet era, concrete construction suggests it's still intact. How do you know it's intact? Asked one of the SEALs, a younger operator with sergeant stripes and sharp eyes. Thermal imaging shows water flow. If the system was collapsed, flow patterns would be different. Also, vegetation growth along the route indicates consistent moisture, suggests the drainage is functional and regularly moving water. The young sergeant exchanged glances with his teammates. She's thorough. She kept 18 of us alive by being thorough, Raven interjected. Trust me, when Phantom 7 says she sees something, it's there. The briefing continued for another 90 minutes. Every detail examined, every contingency planned, every risk assessed and cataloged. This was how professional warriors prepared for operations, where excellence meant survival and mistakes meant body bags. As the team dispersed to handle individual preparations, Rivers pulled Lily aside. Major, I need to ask you something off the record. Go ahead, Commander. Raven told me about Syria, about how you saved 47 operators during an 11-hour siege, about how you refused an order that would have killed civilians and took the career hit rather than compromise your principles. Rivers paused, choosing his words carefully. I need to know. If we're in the field and I give you an order that you think is wrong, what happens? Lily met his gaze without flinching. I voiced my concerns clearly and immediately. If you override those concerns, I execute your orders unless they violate laws of warfare or endanger civilians. If I believe your order will get people killed unnecessarily, I tell you that in language that leaves no room for misunderstanding. But ultimately, you're the operational commander. My job is providing the best intelligence possible so your decisions are informed. And if I make the wrong call anyway, then I do everything in my power to minimize casualties while still supporting the mission. But I won't lie to you, Commander. I won't tell you something safe when it isn't. I won't compromise tactical reality to make anyone feel comfortable. Rivers studied her for a long moment. You know what I like about that answer? It's honest. You're not promising blind obedience, but you're also not claiming authority you don't have. That's the kind of relationship that works in the field. Mutual respect, clear communication, and trust that everyone's trying to accomplish the mission without getting anyone killed unnecessarily. That's my goal, sir. Then we're going to get along just fine. Rivers clapped her shoulder, a gesture of acceptance that meant more than any formal commendation. Welcome to the team, Phantom. Try not to make us look too incompetent when your analysis proves better than ours. 3 days before deployment, Lily received a message on the encrypted frequency Osprey 3 had used. No words, just GPS coordinates and a time, 2200 hours tonight. Location was 15 kilometers outside Bagram, in terrain that offered privacy from observation. She requisitioned a vehicle through channels that didn't require detailed explanation and drove into the Afghan darkness. The coordinates led to an abandoned Soviet-era outpost, concrete bunkers slowly being reclaimed by the desert. A single vehicle waited, lights off, barely visible in the moonless night. Lily approached cautiously, her sidearm accessible but not drawn. The driver's door opened and a figure emerged. Average height, military bearing, face obscured by shadow. Phantom 7. The voice was Osprey 3, distorted slightly by electronic modulation, but recognizable. Thank you for coming. You made it sound important. It is. The mission you're deploying on, Winter Ghost, it's more complicated than your briefing materials indicate. Osprey moved closer, remaining just outside the range where facial features would be identifiable. That facility you're targeting, it's connected to operations that go back to the Phantom program's original purpose, which was strategic intelligence in environments where traditional command structures were compromised or ineffective. We operated in shadows, made decisions that couldn't go through official channels, prevented disasters that nobody would ever know about. Osprey paused. The program officially ended 4 years ago when you refused that bombing order, but 6 of us continued operating under deep cover, conducting missions that Pentagon wanted done but couldn't officially authorize. Lily felt her pulse quicken. Why are you telling me this? Because when you reach that facility, you're going to find evidence of operations that officially don't exist. You're going to discover that some of the intelligence you're acting on came from Phantom operatives who've been embedded in that region for years. And you need to understand, bringing this into official light could expose people who are still serving in positions they can never acknowledge. So, what are you asking me to do? Complete your mission, secure the intelligence, but be prepared for the possibility that some of what you find needs to stay buried. Not everything that serves American interests can be made public. Lily shook her head. I'm not going back to operating in shadows without authorization. I did that in Syria, and it nearly destroyed my career. I'm not making that mistake again. Syria was different. You were refusing an illegal order. This is about recognizing that some operations require deniability. The people you're going to encounter, if you encounter them, they're serving their country just as faithfully as you are. They just do it in ways that can't appear in official records. And if I find evidence of illegal activity, if this facility is producing weapons that violate international agreements, then you report exactly what you find through proper channels. I'm not asking you to cover up crimes. I'm asking you to distinguish between operations that are classified for security reasons and operations that are actually illegal. Osprey's modulated voice carried urgency. The Phantom program existed to handle situations where traditional rules didn't apply, where following procedure meant failure and breaking rules meant success. You understood that once. You need to remember it. I remember watching my career implode because I trusted my judgment over official orders. I remember being told I was too dangerous to keep in operational status. I remember 4 years of being sidelined, while other people made decisions that got people killed. Lily's voice hardened. So, forgive me if I'm not eager to repeat that experience. The difference is you have official authority now. You're not operating as a rogue analyst. You're a senior strategic intelligence officer with full operational backing. What you report will be taken seriously. What you recommend will influence policy. Use that authority wisely. Meaning what? Meaning recognize that some secrets serve legitimate purposes. Meaning understand that the people operating in those shadows are trying to prevent the next major conflict, the next terrorist attack, the next disaster that would cost thousands of lives. They're doing what you did in Syria, making hard choices because someone has to. Lily wanted to argue, wanted to insist on complete transparency and absolute adherence to regulations. But she'd lived in those shadows. She knew that sometimes preventing disaster required actions that couldn't be explained to oversight committees or defended in congressional hearings. If I find phantom operatives in that facility, what am I supposed to do? Trust your judgment. Same as you did in Kandahar when you overrode Hawkins' orders to save those SEALs. Same as you did in Syria when you refused to bomb that school. You've proven you can make the right call under pressure. This is just another situation where the right call might not align with official procedure. Osprey returned to the vehicle, pausing before entering. One more thing, Phantom. The facility you're targeting, it's not just weapons development. It's also intelligence gathering. Some of what you find will expose operations in multiple countries. Operations that are currently preventing conflicts from escalating. Be careful what you bring into the light. Not every shadow is hiding something evil. Some shadows are protecting people who can't protect themselves. The vehicle disappeared into the darkness, leaving Lily alone with information that complicated everything about her upcoming mission. She drove back to Bagram in silence, processing implications that extended far beyond tactical execution. The next morning brought final preparations, equipment checks, communication protocols, emergency extraction procedures. The SEAL team moved with practiced efficiency, professionals who'd conducted similar operations dozens of times in environments just as hostile. Raven found Lily reviewing terrain analysis for the 100th time. You're going to wear out that tablet screen if you keep staring at it. Just making sure I haven't missed anything? You haven't. I've seen your work, remember? You don't miss things. That's why we trust you. Lily looked up from the display. Raven, when we were in Syria during that 11-hour siege, did you ever wonder if following my tactical guidance was the right decision? Every single minute. Raven settled into the chair beside her. You were telling us to hold positions that looked indefensible, to wait for support that might not arrive, to trust analysis from someone we couldn't see and hadn't worked with before. Yeah, we wondered, but we also recognized that every decision you made extended our survival by another hour. So we kept trusting. And after, when my career imploded and I disappeared into analyst positions, we understood. We'd all seen what happens when you challenge the system. Most of us just aren't brave enough to do it. You were, and you paid the price. But you also saved 47 lives, including mine. So, whatever doubts I might have had disappeared when I realized I was alive to have them. This mission in Eastern Europe, if I find something that complicates official objectives, something that requires judgment calls about what gets reported and what stays classified, I need to know the team will trust those decisions. Raven studied her carefully. You're worried about something specific. I'm worried about walking into a situation that's more complex than our briefing materials indicate. I'm worried about discovering operations that serve legitimate purposes, but can't be explained through official channels. I'm worried about making decisions that protect necessary secrets while still accomplishing our mission. Then here's what I know, Major. This team trusts you because you've proven you'll do the right thing even when it costs you personally. Whatever you decide in the field, we'll support it. Not blindly, we'll ask questions, challenge assumptions, make sure you've thought things through. But ultimately, if you say something needs to be done a certain way, we trust that you've got good reasons. Even if those reasons conflict with official orders, especially then, because we've all seen what happens when people follow bad orders just because they're official. We'd rather follow good judgment from someone we trust than bad procedure from someone we don't. Deployment day arrived with the kind of surreal calm that preceded dangerous operations. The team assembled at 0400 hours, conducting final equipment checks in pre-dawn darkness. Lily wore full tactical gear for the first time in 4 years. Body armor, communications equipment, weapons that she'd been trained to use but hoped she wouldn't need. Commander Rivers addressed the team with the economical precision of someone who'd given similar speeches too many times. Mission objectives are clear: infiltrate the facility, secure intelligence materials, assess weapons development capabilities, extract without compromise. Rules of engagement allow defensive action and mission completion by necessary means. Questions? Nobody spoke. These were professionals who'd been thoroughly briefed and knew their roles completely. Good. We insert at 2200 hours local time. Weather forecast shows cloud cover. Advantage for approach, disadvantage for air support if we need extraction. Phantom 7 will guide tactical movement based on real-time terrain analysis. Any guidance she provides should be considered mission critical. Understood? 18 voices responded in unison. Yes, sir. The flight to Eastern Europe took 14 hours across multiple aircraft and through channels that ensured their movement remained invisible to official oversight. By the time they reached the staging area, a small airfield in Poland maintained by intelligence services that appreciated American cooperation, everyone had reviewed the mission plan so thoroughly that they could execute it while unconscious. Final briefing happened in a secured hangar at 2000 hours. Rivers pulled up the holographic display one last time. Phantom, walk us through the infiltration route. Lily activated her tactical overlay. Primary approach uses this drainage system: Soviet construction, concrete reinforced, thermal imaging, confirms structural integrity. Entry point here. She highlighted coordinates 2 kilometers from the facility. The drain runs underground for most of the distance, emerging 50 meters from the primary structure. Guard patrols follow predictable patterns based on 3 days of surveillance. We'll have a 4-minute window to cross from drain exit to building entry. And if the guards deviate from pattern, asked one of the SEALs, then I adjust recommendations in real time based on observed movement. That's why I'm coming with you instead of coordinating from base. Rivers nodded approval. Phantom's tactical guidance kept 18 of our people alive in Kandahar by recognizing when plans needed immediate adjustment. Trust her judgment in the field. The infiltration began exactly as planned. The team moved through darkness with the kind of silent efficiency that marked elite operators. Lily stayed in the middle of the formation, protected by people whose job was violence, contributing analysis that helped them avoid needing to use it. The drainage system was exactly as her analysis predicted. Concrete walls showing decades of deterioration but maintaining structural integrity. Water flowing at ankle depth, cold but manageable. 400 meters of underground movement, each step taking them closer to a facility that officially didn't exist and a mission that could never be acknowledged. They emerged from the drain 53 meters from the primary structure, 3 meters further than satellite imagery had indicated, but within acceptable parameters. Guard patrols were exactly where surveillance predicted. The 4-minute window opened. Rivers signaled movement. 18 SEALs and 1 intelligence officer crossed open ground in complete silence, reaching the building's southern wall without triggering any alarm systems. Entry was achieved through a ventilation access point that Lily had identified through architectural analysis. Inside, the facility transformed from agricultural research center to something far more sinister. Corridors lined with reinforced concrete, security checkpoints every 30 meters, and everywhere, the hum of machinery that suggested operations requiring significant power. Lily pulled up her tactical display, overlaying building schematics with real-time thermal imaging. Commander, heat signatures show concentrated activity in the eastern wing, underground levels. Whatever they're producing, that's where it's happening. Rivers studied the display. Guard presence, minimal in corridors, concentrated at access points. They're protecting specific locations, not patrolling randomly. Suggests they are confident in perimeter security and focused on internal threat prevention. Recommendations? We bypass the obvious routes, use maintenance corridors, here and here, less direct, but lower probability of contact. Emerges at the eastern wing access point from an angle they're not actively monitoring. Rivers made the decision in seconds. We follow Phantom's route. Stay tight, stay quiet, stay ready. The team moved through the facility like shadows, present but unnoticed, lethal but restrained. Twice they encountered security personnel. Twice those encounters were resolved silently by SEALs trained in techniques that left unconscious guards instead of bodies. The Eastern Wing access required electronic bypass, a specialty of the team's technical expert, a quiet operator called Circuit, who could crack security systems faster than most people could use authorized credentials. 3 minutes of work opened the reinforced door, revealing a stairwell descending into underground levels that satellite imagery had only hinted at. Lily checked thermal imaging. Multiple heat signatures below. Machinery, not personnel. But there's something else. Thermal pattern doesn't match any weapons development I've seen. The heat distribution is wrong. Wrong how? Rivers asked. Too uniform? Weapons testing creates localized hotspots, explosive reactions, energy discharge, material stress. This is consistent temperature across a wide area, more like environmental control than weapons production. Storage? Possibly, or preservation of materials that require specific conditions. They descended 3 levels, each floor revealing more sophisticated security and more evidence that this facility served purposes beyond agricultural research. The final level was the most secure. Biometric access controls, reinforced blast doors, air filtration systems that suggested protection against biological or chemical contamination. Circuit bypassed the security in 7 minutes, his longest crack yet, indicating military-grade protection. The door opened onto a chamber that made everyone stop. Row after row of cylindrical containers, each approximately 2 meters tall and 1 meter in diameter. Frost covered the exterior surfaces. Temperature controls showed minus 40 degrees Celsius. And on each container, markings in multiple languages: Russian, English, Chinese, Arabic. Lily approached the nearest container, studying the labels. Her Russian was functional enough to understand what she was reading, and what she read made her blood run cold. "Commander, these aren't weapons. They're biological samples, viruses, bacteria, genetic material from organisms that were supposed to be destroyed under international agreements." Rivers moved beside her, reading the labels with growing alarm. This is everything that was supposedly eliminated after the Soviet biological warfare program shut down. Smallpox, anthrax, plague variants engineered for antibiotic resistance. This is enough pathogenic material to start a pandemic that would kill millions. And it's being preserved, Lily added, not destroyed. Someone has been maintaining these samples for decades, keeping them viable despite international agreements requiring their elimination. One of the SEALs, a veteran operator called Doc, who served as the team's medic, examined the preservation equipment. This is state-of-the-art cryogenic storage, recent installation. Somebody's not just maintaining old samples. They're ensuring these pathogens remain viable indefinitely. Rivers pulled out his communication device. "Base, this is Team Actual. We've found biological weapon stockpile. Recommend immediate containment protocols and specialized extraction." The response took longer than it should have. When it came, the voice was familiar but unexpected. Colonel Audrey Thornton. "Team Actual, this is Control. Maintain current position. Specialized team is inbound for secondary assessment before determining extraction protocols." Rivers exchanged glances with Lily. Something in Thornton's voice suggested this discovery wasn't entirely unexpected. "Control, these materials represent significant threat if compromised. Recommend immediate destruction in place." "Negative, Team Actual. Materials require specialized assessment before any action is taken. Maintain security of location until specialized team arrives. ETA 60 minutes. The communication ended. Rivers looked at his team, seeing the same concern reflected in every face. Specialized teams didn't appear in 60 minutes unless they'd been positioned nearby in advance. Unless someone had known what this facility contained before the mission even started. Lily pulled Rivers aside. "Commander, we need to talk about something. Before we deployed, I was contacted by someone claiming to be a former Phantom operative. They suggested this facility was more complex than our briefing indicated, that it was connected to ongoing intelligence operations. You think Thornton knew what we'd find here?" "I think someone knew. And I think the decision about what happens to these materials isn't going to be made based on international law or public safety. It's going to be made based on strategic intelligence value." Rivers' jaw tightened. "Meaning what? Someone wants to keep this stockpile intact for future use? Or for leverage, or for study, or for any number of reasons that serve intelligence purposes but violate the treaties that are supposed to prevent exactly this kind of biological weapons preservation. And we're supposed to just stand here and let that happen? Lily looked at the rows of containers holding enough death to devastate entire populations. We're supposed to complete our mission, which was to secure intelligence materials and assess weapons development capabilities. We've done that. What happens next is above our authority. That's not good enough, Major. Those containers represent crimes against humanity, treaties that were signed specifically to prevent biological warfare. We can't just ignore that. We're not ignoring it. We're reporting it through proper channels. But we're also recognizing that the decision about disposition isn't ours to make. We're operators, not policymakers. Raven joined the conversation, his voice low. Phantom, if we leave this facility intact, there's no guarantee those materials will be destroyed. They could disappear into classified programs. They could be used for purposes that violate everything we're supposed to stand for. Or they could be destroyed properly by people with expertise we don't have. We don't know enough about these pathogens to destroy them safely. Improper destruction could release materials that would kill everyone in a 50-kilometer radius. Is that a risk you're willing to take? The team fell silent, recognizing the complexity of a situation that had seemed straightforward 60 minutes earlier. This wasn't a simple secure and extract mission anymore. This was a decision point that would determine the fate of biological materials capable of ending millions of lives. The specialized team arrived in 47 minutes, 3 figures in full biological containment suits, accompanied by Colonel Thornton in standard tactical gear. She surveyed the chamber with the calm of someone who'd expected exactly what she was seeing. Commander Rivers, Major Morgan, excellent work securing this location. These materials have been under intelligence surveillance for 6 months. Your mission provided the operational cover necessary to take direct action. Rivers stepped forward. Colonel, with respect, these biological materials violate multiple international treaties. They need to be destroyed immediately. And they will be, Commander. After proper analysis determines exactly what we're dealing with and how it can be safely neutralized. Some of these pathogens haven't been seen since Soviet biological warfare programs were supposedly shut down. We need to understand what we're facing before we destroy evidence that could help develop defenses against similar threats. Or we could be creating an excuse to maintain biological weapons capabilities under the guise of defensive research. Thornton's expression hardened. Commander, I understand your concerns, but this decision isn't yours to make. These materials are now under intelligence service control. Your mission is complete. You're authorized for extraction at 2300 hours. And if we refuse to leave until we have guarantees these materials will be destroyed, then you'll be relieved of duty and replaced by personnel who understand the chain of command. Thornton's voice carried absolute authority. I appreciate your moral convictions, Commander. But operational security requires that some decisions remain above your authorization level. That's how intelligence work functions. Lily watched the confrontation with growing certainty that Osprey 3 had been right. Some operations existed in shadows that couldn't be eliminated without compromising purposes that served legitimate interests. The question was whether those interests justified preserving biological weapons that violated international agreements. Colonel, Lily stepped forward. I need to file an official intelligence report on what we've found here. That report will document the biological materials, their quantities, and their condition. It will be entered into official records that can be reviewed by oversight committees. Is that acceptable? Thornton studied her carefully. Major Morgan, your report will be classified at the highest levels. It will be reviewed by exactly 3 people who have appropriate clearance. It will not be available to general oversight. That's the nature of operations at this classification level. But it will exist, on record, so that if these materials are misused or disappear into unauthorized programs, there's documentation of what was found and what should have happened to it. Yes, your documentation will be part of the official record, limited access, but official. Then I can file that report in good conscience, knowing that someone with oversight authority will have access to information about what happened here. Thornton nodded slowly. That's acceptable, Major. And for what it's worth, I understand your concerns. These materials will be handled according to protocols that prioritize public safety while preserving intelligence value. That's the best assurance I can provide. It wasn't enough. Lily knew it wasn't enough, but it was the reality of operating in a system where complete transparency conflicted with security requirements and where perfect solutions didn't exist for complex problems. Rivers wasn't satisfied. Colonel, I'm formally requesting confirmation that these materials will be destroyed after analysis is complete. Your request is noted, Commander, and denied. The disposition of these materials will be determined by personnel with appropriate authority and clearance. Your mission is complete. Prepare for extraction. The team assembled outside the facility, waiting for transport that would take them back to Poland and eventually to debrief locations where their mission would be cataloged in records that few people would ever read. The operation had been textbook execution. Infiltrate, assess, secure, extract. 0 casualties. Complete intelligence gathering. Mission success by every measurable standard. But Lily felt the weight of compromise settling over everything they'd accomplished. They'd found biological weapons that should have been destroyed decades ago. They'd documented their existence, and they'd left them in the hands of people who might or might not ensure they were eliminated properly. Raven settled beside her on the transport helicopter. You did the right thing back there, documenting everything, making sure there's official record. Did I? Or did I just create the bureaucratic appearance of oversight, while allowing materials that could kill millions to remain under intelligence control? You created accountability. That's more than we usually get in operations like this. Someone will have to answer for what happens to those materials now. Before your report, they could disappear without anyone asking questions. Unless the people with access to my report are the same ones who want the materials preserved. Then you've documented their crime. That's worth something. The helicopter climbed into the darkness, leaving the facility behind. Lily watched through the window as the buildings disappeared into forest that looked peaceful and normal. No indication that beneath that tranquil surface existed enough biological death to devastate populations. Back at the debrief location, Colonel Thornton provided additional context that complicated the moral calculations even further. Major Morgan, Commander Rivers, what you found in that facility represents one component of a larger intelligence operation that's been running for 8 years. We've identified 15 similar locations across Eastern Europe and Central Asia, all maintaining biological materials that were supposed to be destroyed under international agreements. 15? Rivers looked stunned. You're telling me there are 14 more facilities like this? At minimum, possibly more. The biological weapons programs from the Soviet era didn't disappear. They went underground. Our intelligence operations have been tracking them, mapping them, and, when possible, securing them. The facility you just infiltrated is the 7th we've taken control of. And what happens to the materials once you secure them? They're analyzed by specialists who understand these pathogens better than anyone else in the world. The intelligence we gather helps us develop defenses against biological threats. It helps us understand what our adversaries are capable of. And yes, some samples are maintained for legitimate research purposes under strict containment protocols. Lily felt her stomach turn. You're saying we're doing exactly what the Soviets did, maintaining biological weapons under the pretense of defensive research. I'm saying we're ensuring that if biological weapons are used against American interests, we have the capability to respond. That requires understanding the threats we face. Sometimes that understanding requires maintaining samples that would ideally be destroyed, and the international treaties that prohibit exactly this kind of research are less important than protecting American lives. I know that's not the answer you want to hear, Major, but that's the reality of intelligence work at this level. We operate in moral gray zones because our adversaries operate in moral black zones. If we unilaterally disarm while they maintain capabilities, we put our people at risk. Rivers stood abruptly. Colonel, with respect, I didn't join the Navy to participate in biological weapons programs that violate international law. If this is what intelligence work requires, then I need to seriously reconsider my career path. Your moral objections are noted, Commander, but you're also bound by security classifications that prevent you from discussing this operation with anyone outside authorized channels. If you attempt to expose this program, you'll be prosecuted for violating national security laws. That's not a threat. That's a statement of legal reality. The room fell silent. Lily recognized the trap they were in. Knowledge that demanded action combined with restrictions that prevented exactly that action. They'd discovered something that violated international agreements and basic moral principles. But they were legally prohibited from exposing it and practically unable to change it. Colonel, Lily chose her words carefully, my official report will document everything we found. The biological materials, their quantities, their preservation status. That report will be available to whoever has appropriate clearance, correct? Yes. And if those materials are later used in ways that violate your stated purposes, if they disappear into unauthorized programs, or if containment protocols fail, my report will serve as evidence of what should have been done differently. That's correct. Then I can fulfill my obligation as an intelligence officer while maintaining personal integrity. I've documented what I found. What happens next is above my authority, but if things go wrong, there's a record showing what should have happened. Thornton nodded slowly. That's a pragmatic approach, Major, and probably the best resolution we'll find for this situation. You've done your job. The rest